Shabbat Shalom, everyone. This is Rabbi Klein from the Greater Miami Jewish Federation. This week's Parashah, we're introduced to Korach, and Korach leads a full-scale rebellion against Moses and Aaron. And actually, it's not surprising because there seems to be a simmering going on in the camp of the Jewish people throughout the last few Parashiot. Let's look at the timing. The timing happens right after the sin of the spies, where the people have been punished and banished into the desert for 40 years. Then, only a year earlier, we had the sin of the golden calf, where hundreds and thousands of people died. And of course, we have all the murmuring in the desert about the food and all of the discontent that people are experiencing at this point. So it's pretty ripe for a rebellion. And also, the person of Korach is not unexpected because it's Moses' first cousin. He's part of the elite sub-tribe of Levi called Kehat. And so it could be that Korach himself wants more power within this elite tribe. That wouldn't be very unusual, and the Midrashim all point out the competition between Korach and Aaron and Moses, but he also calls 250 other people to rebel with him. These are people that the Torah calls Anshe Shem, people of great repute, great renown. Were they previously firstborns that were dispossessed of their power? Or perhaps they were local party leaders, or maybe even, according to the Midrash, they were members or worthy of becoming members of the Sanhedrin, the great Jewish court in the desert. Either way, all these people were worthy adversaries and had real problems with the power structure in the desert. Then he also gathers Datan and Aviram, who are very upset that they've been brought out of the desert and would like to return to Egypt, where it's clear they had a very nice living in the land of Egypt. And they were also children of the firstborn Reuven, who should have been the leaders of the people because that was the firstborn of Jacob. So all of these different groups have power claims naturally against Moses and Aaron, and they believe that they're sitting here in the desert and they've brought the people to the brink of disaster. They're all going to die here in this barren desert. Think about the recent Israeli elections and the new coalition. You know, this new coalition doesn't agree about many things, but all of them agree no Bibi, no Prime Minister Netanyahu. Here they all agree. Same thing here maybe with this motley coalition. It's a no Moses and Aaron coalition. Anything but them. What do they say? Korach says, Madua titnasu al kehal Hashem. Why do you raise yourself above everyone else? What do you think's going on here, Moses? This is not your own power play. But the story continues, and it doesn't go well for these rebellious individuals. Some are consumed by fire, others are consumed by the earth. There are numerous punishments that happen, and why there are different punishments is a story for a different time. However, was the only issue at play here power? The claim that Korach makes to Moses is, Kulanu Kedoshim. We are all holy people. Rashi says, you know that we all stood at Mount Sinai as well. We all heard the voice of God. It's not fair for one person to have religious authority. In other words, you claim too much power, Moshe, and you, Moses, are hampered to spiritual development. Furthermore, Korach's descendants are considered righteous people. Many of the authors of the Psalms are from a school of writers called the Libnei Korach, the children of Korach. Now, if you're creating a school and your great-great-great-great-great-grandfather was named Korach, you would probably want to disassociate yourself if he was so evil. And yet, this school of psalmists called themselves after their ancestor Korach. The prophet Shmuel, who's considered the greatest prophet who ever lived, is compared to Moses in terms of his prophetic ability. He is a direct descendant of Korach. And the claim that Korach makes, we are all holy, Moses, we should all have access to religious authority. That seems like a genuine desire to emulate Moses or Aaron. In fact, only 2 Parshiot ago in Parashat Balotcha, we had the situation of 2 prophets, Eldad and Medad, who continue prophesying in the camp. Joshua wants to kill them because he feels that that's an affront to Moses, who is the prophet Bar Nun. And what does Moses say? No, Joshua, if only all of the Jewish people were prophets and prophesying all the time. So isn't Korach's claim very similar? Wouldn't it be wonderful, Moses, if all of us were priests? Why do you concentrate the priesthood with a few people? So that sounds like a just claim that he's making. So how can we understand the idea of Korach, the personality of Korach? I'd like to examine the thought of the Hasidic master, the Sokatchev Rabbi, the Shem Mishmuel. Now, generally, Hasidic explanations are not the literal explanation, what we would call the pshat, but they do raise religious themes that emanate from the text. And the Shem Mishmuel quotes the Arizal, Rabbi Isaac Luria of the 16th century, who says that Moses and Korach, who are in some ways brothers because they're cousins, were reincarnations of the soul of Cain and Abel, none other than the first two brothers, Cain and Abel. Now, this notion of reincarnation is very popular in certain mystical circles, but really the idea here is that every human being has an aspect of a soul that was lived in previous lives, and each soul is doing its work of repairing itself. Each soul is in need of a tikkun. So first, let's look at that relationship between Cain and Abel. Cain is actually the main brother. Adam calls him Kaniti ish et Hashem. I have acquired a person of stature for God or with God. The Shem Mishmuel says, what does it mean, Kaniti et? I have acquired. To acquire something in life is an act of gathering something to yourself. It's an assertion of self, in fact. Acquisition comes from a realization that I have a space in this world. There's a you and a me, and I want to advance the me. However, this on a spiritual plane is called yeshut, which means in English egoism, the ego. It's important to have a sense of ego in life, yet it cannot only be for the self. Hillel said, "Im ein ani mili," if I'm not for myself, who am I? Ukshani le'atzmi ma'ani. But if I'm only for myself, who am I? And Adam named him Kaniti ish et Hashem. I have created a person with God, for God. And Cain's identity was imprinted also with God. I have acquired a man. All of his abilities, his capacity is supposed to be driven for a higher purpose. So this individual, this person of import, the ego, needs to always be driven by a higher purpose. And then we have Abel, in Hebrew, the word hevel. Hevel in Hebrew, in English, means vapor, nothing. In reality, what we would call ashmata. Hevel lacked any inner sense and an ego, and that wasn't good. For without ego, there's no drive to achieve anything in this world. Adam says, also his brother, also Hevel, was born. Abel is, quote, an also. He's an appendage. He has no internal sense, no drive. He is somewhat self-effacing. And who was the one who initiated the offerings to God? Not Abel. Yes, Abel's sacrifice was accepted for whatever reason. But who initiated the act of sacrificing and giving back to God? Cain. Cain brought the offerings to God, and then Abel saw, and it says that also Hevel brought his offerings. So Abel is very passive. He doesn't initiate anything throughout the narrative. So both Cain and Abel have a negative trait. Abel, unlike Jacob, who was a second-born child, who struggles to assert himself in the family, to become Yisrael, become Israel, Abel doesn't do anything new. He is a passive personality. He is a nothing in a sense. However, Cain ends up killing his brother because his ego lost all sense of self. He could not allow his brother to shine, to take center stage for the minute. He forgot the interconnectivity. He forgot the role he's supposed to play, and therefore ended up destroying his own brother. So Moses and Korach, for the Arizal, for Isaac Luria, were Gilgolim, reincarnations of some of these traits. Let's look at Moses. Moses truly is a unique individual, if there ever was one. He made it up to the mountaintop. He was the only one to speak with God face to face. He is unique. Moses also is a person that takes initiative. He's a spiritual innovator. When he saw the Egyptians strike the Jew, who's the first one to take action? It was Moses. And yet there's a danger. There's a danger with Moses. Are you doing this for your own ego? Are you doing this for your own self-advancement? Or are you doing this for a higher purpose? In fact, what does Korach say? Lama titnasu al kal Hashem. Yes, indeed. You are a special individual, but you're doing this for yourself. Why do you aggrandize yourself before the people, make yourself higher than everyone else? That's what Korach was saying. Perhaps for this reason, the Torah needs to remind us all that Moses was anav mikol adam. He was the most modest of everyone. Moses feared himself. Moses feared his ability, that his ego would get out of control. And so Moses was modest to the point of self-effacing. Moses generally, when challenged, doesn't challenge back, but rather falls down on his face in despair. In essence, Moses is a person that's afraid of himself. He's very mindful of his own abilities, and he needs to keep them in check. He needed to have that element of hevel, of self-effacement, to understand that sense that it's not all about me. And then conversely, the Shem Mishmuel says that Korach was the reincarnation of Hevel. Hevel was a person that had no initiative. He was the also person. Korach had that deep inside him and wanted to fix that. He felt that he needed to actually exert himself to make an impact in this world. His natural state was that of Abel, but he pushed himself to seek transcendence. He wanted to make a difference in this world. He was spiritually motivated. He wanted, he says, to be a Kohen. He wanted to be holy. Why are you holding the keys to religious authority only with Aaron? I want to serve. I want to give. However, in this process, he forgot himself. He wasn't mindful. And it moved from wanting to serve, wanting to make a difference, to ultimately becoming all about him, really about power. In the words of the Ari, which is very, very thought-provoking, when the soul trait of Abel is removed from Moses, Moses turns into a Korach. Again, when that soul trait of Abel, the self-effacement, is removed from Moses, there's no check, that person turns into Korach. In conclusion, the Talmud teaches us, Bishvili nivra ha'olam. For me, the world was created. However, the phrase can actually mean two things. Bishvili nivra ha'olam, the world was created for me. One way of looking at it is, the world is created for me, for my sake. It's about me. Another way you might want to read this is, the creation is indispensable. Your creation is indispensable to the world. You're needed, and the world needs you. The first way of looking at it, the world's about me, creates a sense of entitlement. Why don't I have this job? Why don't I have this promotion? But the other idea is about your responsibility. Bishvili nivra olam, the world's indispensable without me. I have a role to play. I need to know how to use my skills for this higher end. The world cannot be redeemed without my assistance. When we act in the world, when we walk through the world, which way are we translating the phrase? Are we like a Moses or are we like a Korach? Wishing all of you a very Shabbat Shalom.